Good evening and welcome to Breaking Views, the only show on primetime Indian television where we get you all the views so that you get the complete picture. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. Two stories that we are tracking. Story number one, the Supreme Court did something very interesting today, asked a question that everybody is asking in this country on the future of the sedition law. They said, and this was a proposal that came in from the petitioner, that would the court please till such time that we are reviewing the validity of this law, put these sedition cases on hold. The Supreme Court asked the government, and the government is supposed to reply. So we ask this question of particularly those people who have been at the receiving end of this law. Should sedition cases be paused until the law review? And many of these people say it's about time. They're either victims directly or family members of those who are facing the wrath of this law. Also on the show, the Santoor maestro is no more. We speak to Ustad Amjad Ali Khan on Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma's demise, and he says in this interview that it was a personal loss for me. He also says that a life like this must be celebrated along with being mourned. So we'll play out that interview in just a short moment from now. But first, let me quickly get straight into this discussion. This time around, we thought not of inviting lawyers and panelists, but all those people who have had a direct connection in some way or the other with this law. We are joined in by Dr. Kafil Khan. He has faced sedition cases. We have Natasha Narwal, is a women human rights activist. These sedition charges were dropped, but were definitely put. Ansar Indori is Siddiq Kapan's friend and room partner in Jangpura. Remember, Siddiq Kapan has been jailed due to a sedition case for a very long time now, more than a year in fact. And we have Mukund Gowda. He is also a volunteer member with climate change activist Disha Ravi, who also faced sedition charges, is facing in fact. Thank you very much. Your opinion matters most rather than some lawyers, which is why it's interesting to know what each one of you will have to say. Natasha Narwal, I want to begin with you. The fact that in the court today, the court has asked the government to pause any investigation or any movement further in the sedition case or sedition cases, do you think could perhaps be the first step or the first sign towards ending this colonial law and the misery it brings simply because it is used by political masters?
I really do hope so, that it is a step in that direction and not an end in itself, because what specifically, what is happening is by the center, who's the executive, right? And the law is, the allegations are that the law is being misused by the executive. So if you are putting the process of review and decision back to the executive, not even the parliament, not even the legislature. So I think the least that should be done, which the Supreme Court has asked the center to do, is to put these cases on hold till that process. But I would like to say that, the executive is under the scrutiny, and that is why we need judicial scrutiny, that when the executive exceeds their mandate and becomes unjust to its own people. Therefore, we need another body, and Supreme Court is that body, that judicial scrutiny that should happen. So actually, I would go a step further and say that instead of giving it back to the executive to review the law, and if you look at the statistics like NCRB data, from 2016 to 19, there has been 160% increase in the cases of filing of sedition cases. And we have various examples when they do not stand the judicial scrutiny when it comes to that. So I think the judiciary has to step forward and take this matter in its own hand and review with a full constitutional bench rather than giving it back to the executive.
Okay, interesting. Dr. Kafil Khan, what is your view as someone who has faced the wrath of sedition charges, and then you have also got relief from the courts in this country? Do you think that the court has put the government in a tight spot by asking them to at least pause these cases? Do you think that this will help many, maybe not you because you had to go through the long grind, but many others who could potentially be victims of the misuse of this law?
I would start with the Mahatma Gandhi famous statement calling this draconian law as a prince among the political section to suppress the freedom of speech, the liberty given by the constitution. And it's a 1860 law which is still live. I would just agree with Natasha what she said, that we're giving the ball again to those people who are playing with that ball. So judiciary has to come, and in my case, the High Court and the Supreme Court has clearly said that district magistrate has not applied his mind. But who is going to give my 8 months back? See, who is going to the family? No, family who is the real sufferer. The time is not going to come back. Whatever has happened to my son and daughter, and the stigma attached to us is not going to give us back. Even I'm even after the charges were dropped in 2020, in almost 2 years, and I'm still called as a terrorist. I'm still called as a Atangwadi, Deshdrohi, that who is going to give our life back? Out of 326 cases, only 6 conviction in 7 years. So I would just say the judiciary has to come, and what judiciary has said, that pause, and they should not put the new sedition law to anyone. So I think it's a welcome.
And do you think
move.
that this is the onus not just on the centre, while the centre will reply on this, but Mr. Ansar Indori also very specifically this message should go out to states. For instance, Mr. Siddiq Kapan is facing these charges not because the centre pressed them, but because they were pressed by a state government. And it's not just BJP ruled states. You have sedition being used very generously by all state governments.
Especially Assam, Jharkhand, Punjab.
हमको ये समझना है कि आप अगर सरकार के खिलाफ बात कर रहे हैं, सरकार की जन विरोधी नीतियों के खिलाफ लिख रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं, तो सरकार आपको देशद्रोह के मामलों में डाल सकती है। सिद्दीक कपन बहुत लंबे टाइम से सुप्रीम कोर्ट को कवर करते रहे, पार्लियामेंट को कवर करते रहे, तो रेगुलर वो अपने काम को बहुत ईमानदारी के साथ करते रहे, और उसी दिन भी उनको ईमानदारी से अपना काम करने के लिए हाथ रच गए थे। एक पत्रकार जिसकी जिम्मेदारी है कि समाज को सच्चा आईना दिखाए, वो आईना दिखाने के लिए अपनी पत्रकारिता धर्म को वो निभाने के लिए गए थे, और इसके बाद जो है वहां पर जाकर के जो हुआ पूरी दुनिया ने देखा किस तरीके से जो है उनके ऊपर सेडिशन का केस लगा करके पत्रकार को बता दिया गया कि एक देशद्रोह है। तो ये पहला केस नहीं है हिंदुस्तान में, इससे पहले भी हम देखते हैं विनोद दुआ के ऊपर हुआ है, और भी पत्रकार साथियों के ऊपर हुआ है। तो ये आवाज जो है असहमति की या सरकार से नहीं मिलती हुई जो आवाजें हैं उसको दबाने के लिए इसका एक इस्तेमाल गलत तरीके से किया जा रहा है। हम स्वागत करते हैं आज के सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने स्टेप लिया है, जिस तरीके से पूछा है, और उम्मीद भी है कि सरकार इसके अंदर जो है कुछ अच्छी कार्रवाई भी करेगी।
Bilkul. Mukund Gowda, I want to come to you now. Almost on any charge that the government feels fit, left to the government's discretion, whether it is a toolkit or whether it feels that the report may be unfavorable, sedition is very, very generously used. Do you think that this very generous use of a sedition charge is perhaps a great opportunity for the legislature to step in as, beg your pardon, the judiciary to step in, as Natasha was pointing out?
Yes, sir. As you said, the party which is in the ruling dispensation is using this particular section as sedition charges very, very generously. When you come to the local politics, they use all other cases like atrocity, violence, 144 and other cases there. And the central government has had a very great pleasure of invoking the sedition charges. Be it for Disha Ravi's case, I think 1 year before, They picked her up in Bangalore and then landed up in Delhi. And even today, if I turn back the interim court order, it says the police have failed in their preliminary duties in their primary investigation. But still, the lady faces that charges, like the fellow panelist was telling. She's been called as a terrorist, Pakistan agent, Khalistan agent, and many other things. And today, as you stated in the beginning, the judiciary has given a chance to the government. I think the central government has taken time in order to make sure that the judiciary won't take a very stringent action and doesn't give a proper judgment in that case. So this is an interim judgment, is what I feel, an overall observation, and they have taken much time in order to take a lot of time. And Mr. Rijiju was in fact giving all flowery words, stating that Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav mein Prime Minister wants to rethink about it, review about it, and all. If at the virtue of Prime Minister, if this act is getting reviewed, I mean, what else the country would expect is my question. I think the court has given a fair chance to the government to think about it and come back. I think what would be the next step is they'll form a committee, they'll form multiple panels to discuss about it, and then go back and say we want to do this, we want to do that, and then again I think citizens will be put at the dark. And I think what I am reading about this from the past few days, I think after Prime Minister visited a lot of other countries and came back, and recently a few of the BJP puppets were also arrested from various other governments. I think that is where the ruling dispensation has seriously taken this and talking about this charges.
I think the fact that it is now in the Supreme Court, remember, sedition has reached the doors of the Supreme Court many times, right from 1962, where its definition was kind of clarified that it is not something which will be pressed for criticizing the government or speaking against the government, which was the original act, by the way, but if it leads to violence. But the point is, this law itself is faulty. No matter what you try to build on it, it is going to be faulty. So is this for the first time that we see after so many years, and the government also saying that fine, we'll look into it. We're looking at perhaps reviewing this law. Is this the best time for us to build a strong case to end, first pause and then end this colonial history, which is being misused not just by the central government, but all state governments, all. Whichever government.
Sanket, it's not only the sedition law. I think the National Security Act, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, or UAPA, all three is draconian law, or any other draconian law passed. We are putting it. There is no place in this modern democracy, Indian democracy. All these three laws should be scrapped, and the court has to come to rescue for those people
who
have been gone through this. They should
the
be
judiciary
given
does it or the
compensation.
legislature. But the point is, it's now time, and arguments are being built now, that the sedition law should be relegated to the dustbin. Thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. Thank you. Renowned santoor player Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, who took the stringed instrument to the global stage and successfully straddled the worlds of classical and film music, died in Mumbai today following a heart attack. He was 84. He had been active till the end and was due to perform in Bhopal next week. He was also suffering from many other ailments. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among those who condoled Sharma's death, saying, "Our cultural world is now poorer." Sarod player Ustad Amjad Ali Khan also said that Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma's death was a personal loss for him. And we have Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, Padma Vibhushan. Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, thank you very much for joining us. This is an indeed sad day, and I believe more so for you, because in your tweet also you say it's a personal loss.
Yes, it's as if my family member has passed away, because we spend so much time together. We performed in so many festivals. We celebrated New Year's in his residence in Mumbai, and he has visited to our house. He was equally a great tabla player. because in Jammu he was he was a staff artist of All India Radio, and he himself told me that he accompanied so many great musicians. Because for a santoor player, it is very, very important to know tabla and to understand tabla, lekari. If you are not a good tabla player, I mean, this is my suggestion to young santoor players, that they must learn tabla. Because Shivji, because of his lekari, because of his rhythm, and I mean, santoor, he brought santoor to international level, because santoor earlier was considered only a folk instrument. To bring out the classical, murki, khatka, taan, gamak, and Shivji gave a different dimension to this instrument. I'm sure his legacy will continue by his disciples and his own sons, exactly. Rahul Sharma, Rohit Sharma, and Sanket ji, you want to question something?
Yes, Ustad Sahab, what I wanted to know is, this is very interesting that you mentioned that your advice to young santoor players will be to learn tabla as well. I really wonder tabla requires for you to be nimble-fingered.
Yes.
What's the correlation between a santoor and a tabla, and why did Pandit Sharma choose to do this?
No, because Shivji, as he was called affectionately, his father was also a great musician. So he encouraged him to be a tabla player. And in my young days also, I learned tabla, because for every musician, tabla is very, very important. Lekari is very important, and santoor, every instrument has limitations, but santoor, could not produce that kind of slides and glides. Whatever, sitar or sarod can produce, or sarangi can produce. But he made, sometimes his santoor was singing. He made it so beautiful. True. He made it so the whole world enjoyed his performance and his santoor. So tabla is very important for every musician, whether he is a sarod player or sitar player. And santoor, what Shivji, he gave a different dimension. Santoor, the word santoor comes, Shivji's face is there.
Ustad Sahab, what is your memory, a distinct memory of Pandit Sharma? Like, I can share mine, because I'm very excited to tell you this. When you both appeared together along with many other stars, many other singers and musicians in the video Desh Rag, it was a treat for a young boy to see these two celebrated personalities. Him sitting in a shikara and playing, and you, I think, in New Delhi, perhaps.
Yes, around the monument. And a lot of young children were there. Aman was also very young at that time. They were all around me. So that was amazing, that Rag Desh. But Shivji, because he lived in Mumbai, he came from Kashmir, and he was part of most of the important songs, what Lataji sang, or Muhammad Rafi, or Hemant Kumar, all our great Mukherjee playback singers. And he gave music for so many films, especially Silsila, that Amitabh Ji was the hero of that film. So I think every classical musician has a composer inside, but sometimes we suppress that composer and we remain be a sarod player or sitar player or santoor player. But Shivji or Hariji, both Shiv Hari, combinedly they gave music. And so many films, his santoor and flute, they were very important part. And gradually then we invited him to Gwalior in our Sarod Ghar, and we had honored him with Hafiz Ali Khan Award, and he performed also in Gwalior. So it's a great loss. And in this COVID period, this pandemic, we have really lost so many of our great musicians like Pandit Jasraj Ji, Pandit Birju Maharaj, and Pandit Rajan Mishra. So, I mean, we are we will always miss all these people, and especially because Shivji has a tremendous sense of humor also.
Really, would you like to tell us a little bit about this? Because, you know, Ustad Sahab, as you are mentioning this, I'm so happy that while the country and the world is upset at this loss, at the same time, Ustad Sahab, you are also trying to bring out this aspect of him that generations should remember. Would you like to tell us about this sense of humor a little?
Yes, because sense of humor is very important for every human being. And classical musicians, people feel we are always very serious and we are always mourning something. It's not like that. So in our free time, when few musicians get together, we are sharing jokes and we are... And Shivji could narrate the way he used to narrate. I remember once he was telling a joke about two Punjabi people. They were discussing classical music. तो कहते हैं जलंधर में एक फेस्टिवल होता था, बल्लभ म्यूजिक फेस्टिवल. So the two people of Punjab, they are discussing great musicians like Pandit Omkarnath Thakur and Pandit Narayan Rao Patwardhan. कहते हैं गाना तो ओमकारनाथ गांधा सी, इतना चंगा गांधा सी और इतना गाता था तो उसके मुंह लाल हो जाते थे. तो दूसरा कहता है नहीं गाना तो पटवर्धन जी ज्यादा अच्छा गाते थे, सुर को ऊपर ले जाते थे, टोपी उतार लेते थे, फिर तबले वाले के मुंह पर वो मार देते थे कुछ ऐसा. So I mean the observation of in the audience के सम जब आता है when we complete our phrase, तो सम के ऊपर आपने देखा होगा कि वोकलिस्ट लोग तबले वाले की तरफ हाथ ऐसे करके सम पे दिखाते हैं. So people have their own kind of observations, and so this is the two people from Punjab they were discussing. But Shivji narrated so many jokes, and we used to enjoy it. We used to look forward. I remember last time we met in Pune. The Pune organizers invited me and Shivji and Hariji to honor Dr. Prabha Atre, great singer from Maharashtra. So that was our last meeting, and since 2-3 years we could not meet, we could not talk. So it was such a shocking news for all of us.
Ustad Sahab, was Pandit Sharma's life well lived? The reason why I ask you this question is because it is often an issue of great lament for many classical singers and musicians that the younger generation is not oriented towards classical forms of music. So was he able to convince, or will this legacy be strong enough for younger generation to remember?
You see, classical music always had struggle, and it will have struggle, there will be struggle always. So Shivji also, from Jammu, how he came to Mumbai, and it's a long history, long journey. So hard work, sadhana, riyaz, this is most important. I mean, people should not think that it's, if we wear good, Shivji used to wear very beautiful kurtas. You must have noticed that the silk kurtas, very colorful kurtas. He really celebrated life, because music is a celebration of life, and music cannot lie. It's so transparent. If I'm out of tune, you will come to know. But language creates barriers, and through language you can cover up so many things. But sound, we say Swar hi Ishwar hai. So we cannot manipulate through sound. It's very transparent. So the young musicians, young learners of classical music, they must concentrate, and they must have blessings of Guru and parents, and sadhana, Swar sadhana. I still remember Tyagaraja, the Swami Tyagaraja of South India. it was my desire to visit his samadhi. And at that time, that was the condition that one has to play a composition of Tyagaraja. So I learned, that Karnataka music, Rag Sri Ranjini. But the lyrics of that song was, he was a devotee of Lord Rama. Tyagaraja कह रहे हैं कि भगवान क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि मैं अपने लाइफ टाइम में इन 7 सुरों का मतलब समझूं और इन 7 सुरों को समझ लूं, to understand the meaning of these 7 musical notes. So this is a great lesson for all of us, that we must do our sadhana. सिर्फ सुर में बजाना या गाना is not enough. Your music should be appealing. वो तासीर आए, कशिश आए, वो तासीर और कशिश साधना से और आशीर्वाद से ही आती है, सिर्फ रियाज से नहीं होता सब कुछ.
And do you think, Ustad Sahab, finally, this is a message that Pandit Sharma would have loved to send, a message he lived all his life and a message he would want young musicians and his followers to follow from here on?
Yes, sadhana is very important. Sadhana is very important. So Shivji, Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma ji will always be in our heart. उनका म्यूजिक हमें हमेशा याद रहेगा, उनकी शख्सियत, उनकी पर्सनालिटी, और we'll always, and we have great expectations from his children and disciples. The Santur will continue forever in the world.
Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, thank you so much. And this is such a great loss for not just the music industry, not just for friends like you, but for anyone, in fact for the country and the world. Musician as well as celebrated Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma no more. Thank you very much.